The world of crypto can feel like a roller coaster, right? And when celebrities jump on board, well, it often gets even wilder. You're tuning in because you want to quickly grasp the essentials of these complex situations, and today we've definitely got a perfect example lined up.
We certainly do. We're diving into the legal saga surrounding Caitlyn Jenner's Memecoin, Jenner. Our sources here are news articles covering the lawsuit filed by investors and, importantly, its recent dismissal in court.
Okay.
And our mission really is to understand exactly what happened, why the judge threw the case out, and what this whole episode reveals about the, let's say, often risky business of celebrity-endorsed cryptocurrencies.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. A group of buyers felt burned by this Jenner token and decided to sue Caitlyn Jenner and her manager. What was the core of their argument?
Right. So back in November, this class action lawsuit was filed. It named both Jenner and her manager, Sophia Hutchins. The central claim, the main accusation, was that they fraudulently solicited financially unsophisticated investors, that's the quote, to buy Jenner. And the plaintiffs alleged this token was essentially an unregistered security being offered to the public without the necessary legal filings.
An unregistered security, okay.
Yep.
And who actually stepped up to lead this legal charge? Was there a main plaintiff?
Yeah, there was. The lead plaintiff who emerged in January was a man named Lee Greenfield, actually a UK resident. He claimed to have personally lost over $40,000 after investing in a Jenner token.
$40,000, okay. So the lawsuit was filed, the accusations are out there, then it goes before a judge. What happened in court?
Well, things took a decisive turn on May 9th. Judge Stanley Blumenfeld Jr. of the California District Court delivered a pretty significant decision. He dismissed the entire lawsuit.
The whole thing. Wow.
Right. The whole thing. In his ruling, he stated very clearly that all 9 causes of action are deficient. He essentially agreed with Jenner's side that the lawsuit just failed to present a legally sound case.
Failure to state a claim. I've heard that phrase. It sounds quite definitive. What does that really mean in this kind of situation?
It's legal speak, yeah. But essentially, it means the judge determined that even if everything the plaintiffs alleged were true, it wouldn't legally add up to a valid reason for the court to provide a remedy under the law. One of the key problems he flagged was with the securities law violation claim.
Okay.
The judge pointed out that the lawsuit didn't even state that Mr. Greenfield's token purchases happened within the United States.
Ah.
And that's a fundamental requirement for U.S. securities laws to actually apply. On top of that, the lawsuit provided, and this is the judge's wording, scant details about the specifics of these purchases.
So the lead plaintiff being outside the U.S. and just a lack of detail about the actual buying, those were major stumbling blocks for the securities claim then.
Precisely. Big ones. And crucially, the court also decided not to let the plaintiffs swap in a U.S.-based investor to take over as the lead plaintiff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that further weakened their ability to pursue that specific type of claim, the securities violation one.
Okay, but I think you mentioned 9 causes of action.
Right.
So the lawsuit had other grounds beyond just the security stuff, right? What happened with those claims?
Yes, exactly. There were 8 other claims, and they were all dismissed, too. They covered things like making misleading statements, selling unregistered securities generally, various forms of fraud, but they were all found legally insufficient.
How so?
Well, for example, one claim alleged Jenner sold the token using a prospectus that had false info. But the judge noted that Mr. Greenfield, the lead plaintiff himself, actually admitted in the filings that the Jenner tokens weren't sold through a prospectus at all.
Oh, well, that seems to directly contradict their own claim then.
It does. It undermines that specific argument completely.
Okay, what about just general fraud, common law fraud?
Right, the common law fraud accusation. The court acknowledged the complaint mentioned Jenner's posts on X, where she kept supporting the token, and it mentioned information the plaintiffs claimed was omitted. However, the judge found the lawsuit didn't clearly connect the dots. It didn't establish a direct link between the specific statements Jenner made and the alleged fraudulent activity. They didn't show, essentially, a clear intent to deceive through those specific communications.
Got it. So not enough connection shown. And Caitlyn Jenner's manager, Sophia Hutchins, she was named too. How did the dismissal affect her part in this?
Good question. The claim that Sophia Hutchins aided and abetted Jenner's alleged fraud was also dismissed. And the judge's reasoning was pretty straightforward, really, since the lawsuit hadn't adequately made the case for an underlying fraud by Jenner in the first place.
Right.
Then the claim that Hutchins helped in that fraud couldn't really stand on its own. You can't aid something that hasn't been sufficiently alleged itself.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, throughout all this, I imagine there was some back and forth about whether Jenner even is a security. Did the judge weigh in on that? Do you have an opinion?
You know, that's one of the really interesting parts. While Jenner and the plaintiffs obviously disagreed strongly on whether Jenner should be classified as a security, the judge explicitly said he was not going to make a definitive ruling on that question, at least not at this stage.
Why not? Yeah, that seems like a pretty central question, doesn't it?
It does, but his reasoning was twofold. First, the securities-related claims had already failed for those other reasons we talked about, the location, the lack of detail. Second, he pointed out that determining if a digital token like Jenner is a security is often very fact-dependent.
Meaning?
Meaning it requires a really close look at all the specific circumstances around how it was offered and sold. He felt that if the plaintiffs came back with an amended complaint with more facts,
Oh, okay.
that could potentially change the analysis of whether it's a security. So he basically kicked that can down the road, deferred the decision for now.
Okay, that helps clarify the legal side. To get the full picture, though, let's rewind a bit. How did this Jenner token even start? I seem to recall the launch itself wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
You remember correctly, it was quite messy. Jenner initially launched back in May of this year, 2024, on the Solana blockchain. It used a platform called pump.fun, and almost right away, it was mired in controversy. Jenner, and actually several other celebrities launching meme coins around that same time, claimed a collaborator, a guy named Sahil Arora, had basically run a scam during these launches. They felt they'd been defrauded, too.
Right, I remember hearing about that alleged scammer. So after that initial drama, what did Jenner do with the token?
Well, Jenner decided to relaunch it, but this time on the Ethereum blockchain. And interestingly, the plaintiffs in this lawsuit we're discussing specifically pointed to that relaunch. They argued it caused the value of the original Solana-based Jenner token to just plummet.
Harming the original buyers.
Exactly. That was their argument. And adding another layer, reports surfaced that Jenner was collecting at their 3% fee on every single transaction of this new Ethereum-based Jenner token.
A 3% cut on every trade. So how has this relaunched Jenner token actually done in the markets since all this unfolded? Has it held any value?
Well, held value might be generous. By pretty much any measure, its performance has been dramatic, and not in a good way for investors. It apparently reached a peak market cap of nearly $7.5 million around June 3rd. But since then, the value of Jenner has crashed significantly.
How bad is it now?
Recent data puts its market value at only around $58,775.
From $7.5 million down to under $60,000.
Yeah. And just to show how little activity there is now, the total trading volume in the last 24 hours before that report was something like $61 total.
$61. That's basically zero interest. Sounds like anyone who invested early probably took a huge hit.
Oh, absolutely. A massive decline. It suggests substantial losses for many early buyers.
So with this dismissal by the judge, is that the end of the road for this lawsuit? Is it completely done?
Not quite, actually. Judge Blumenfeld has given the plaintiffs another shot. He's granted them an opportunity to file an amended version of their lawsuit.
Okay, a do-over.
Sort of. They have a deadline, May 23rd, to submit this revised complaint. But the judge also gave a pretty clear warning. He stressed that this amending suit needs to be, quote, more focused and judiciously pleaded than the original one. Meaning he expects a much stronger, tighter, more legally precise argument this time around. He's not going to entertain another deficient filing.
So, a second chance, but the bar is high. What's the reaction been from the plaintiff side, their lawyers?
Well, a lawyer representing the class group, Jack Fitzgerald, put out a statement. He said they were, quote, pleased the court recognized we may be able to state some claims against the defendants and intend to amend and press forward with the case.
So they plan to refile?
It seems so. And the court also directed the class group to give an update by May 16th on how they plan to proceed with the whole litigation process.
Right. It really sounds like the judge is saying, look, your first attempt wasn't good enough. Fix these specific problems, come back with a much more compelling legal argument, or, this really is over.
That's a perfect summary. Exactly. The initial lawsuit just didn't meet the necessary legal standards, especially in clearly showing securities law violations and properly outlining the alleged fraud. The judge essentially laid out the weaknesses and gave them one chance to address those specific shortcomings.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. If we bring it all together, what are the really key takeaways from our deep dive into this whole Caitlyn Jenner Memecoin lawsuit situation?
I think the main things for you to remember are these. First, the initial class action suit against Caitlyn Jenner and her manager over the Jenner Memecoin got dismissed, full stop. But importantly, this dismissal wasn't a final judgment on whether the token is a security or if fraud definitely didn't happen. It was dismissed because the plaintiffs' arguments were found legally insufficient. They lacked the necessary support, the details, especially on the securities and fraud claims.
Got it. Insufficient arguments.
Right. And second, the door isn't completely closed. The plaintiffs have been given a window until May 23rd to amend their lawsuit and try again. So the legal fight might not be over just yet.
And for you listening, especially if you're trying to quickly get your head around these often confusing crypto stories, this case really throws a spotlight on the incredibly volatile and frankly often legally murky world of celebrity-backed crypto. It just underscores the huge risks investors can face in this space. And it shows the real difficulties in trying to hold promoters accountable when things go south, when investments don't live up to the hype.
Absolutely. And this whole situation, it really poses a pretty important question for you to think about, doesn't it? Considering this case and just the wider trend of celebrities jumping into crypto, what does this tell us about the future of these kinds of ventures? What responsibilities do public figures really have when they enter this highly speculative, often unregulated market?
Yeah.
And maybe most importantly for anyone thinking about investing, what critical questions should you be asking yourself before you even think about putting money into similar opportunities pushed by famous names? Definitely something to chew on as this crypto space keeps evolving.